Okay, I think we're all set up. Everything should be good. Yep, everything appears to be up and working. There we go. Get that. Okay, we should be good. All right. Today, it's 40k Warhammer lore. Well, Warhammer 40k. Whichever way you want to say it. A lot of people say 40k, some say Warhammer. Most say it in different ways. Anyhow, this is lore on how it, basically where it starts and it begins. The Horus Heresy, one of the most popular that we wish was animated series. My knowledge on 40k history is surface level at best. There's a few things I know and a few things I don't. But this is one of my favorite series. I do like it. I just like in-depth lore. So, definitely going with it. And this is Warhammer 40k Start of the Great Crusade. It's made by Wizards and Warriors channel. It's actually very well animated.
A brutal galaxy where fanatically religious humanity wages an unending war, where terrifying aliens seek the destruction of life, where another plane of reality exists, one filled with bloodthirsty demons and ruthless gods actively seeking the doom of all who enter it, where magic and other physics-defying phenomena exist. Upon seeing all of this, it is hard to imagine that the setting of Warhammer 40k is a grimdark manifestation of the far future of our very own timeline. To understand how technology-focused humanity found itself in such a destructive future, one must delve into its roots. Welcome to our series on Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy.
I'm curious if humans' technology during the Dark Age surpassed Eldars and the weird robot people who went from organic to mechanical. Because you have the Eldar, then the Eldar. Who the heck? They're starts with an N. I forget what they're called. But they're technologically advanced. I'm curious if humans' technology surpassed all the previous races' technology. That's what I'm curious about.
Explaining the origins of the Imperium and Chaos. This first video will explore how humanity conquered the galaxy twice. And this story is brought to you alongside another, that being our sponsor, Double Blind by Jay McCoy. This book is a big hitter in the world of lit RPG, stories with video game-like settings. In this case, the mysterious aftermath of a meteor strike leaves protagonist Matt trapped within the System, a world of scheming and stealth in which he must hide the fact that he is no NPC but a powerful agent. The new world is packed with exotic resources for corporations to exploit, and the unknown System giving out video game-style powers appears to itself have sinister intentions. Matt must adapt to survive, build his in-game class and skills carefully, and be mindful that if he fails, he dies. But if he succeeds, the rewards in this new world are beyond imagination. So once you're done with the beginning of our story here today, go check out Double Blind, with our link in the description. Humanity, driven by the unrelenting need for progress and expansion, started colonizing the solar system in the 3rd millennium. After pushing terraforming technology to its limits, the entire solar system was colonized, and to enable further colonization, massive spaceships were created to reach other stars. This era was known as the Age of Progress, and lasted until the 15th millennium. The defining factor of this era was sublight speed travel. This limiting factor meant that each star system that humans inhabited was isolated. To reach other star systems, at least a few decades were needed, with longer travel lasting entire generations. Even communication couldn't be established, as a one-way signal that traveled at light speed would reach colonies only after a few years. The era-changing moment was the invention of warp drive, an engine that allowed entering an entirely different...
We're getting into Star Trek territory. Warp drive. Except they didn't enter gates, they just flew really, really fast.
...dimension, called the warp or immaterium, through which travel that well exceeded the speed of light was possible. Humanity soon started colonizing the entire galaxy. As fast as humanity's territory grew, so did the development of artificial intelligence. Automatons, called Men of Iron, helped mankind improve to unthinkable levels. The
Men of Iron. It's such a weird name for AI that, well, became sentient. And the weird thing is, I'd say we're getting closer and closer to that, but when I look at those, I think the name Men of Iron doesn't really come to mind. I mean, why are we calling them Men of Iron? Iron is old metal. Not used as much, more like steel and titanium. Titanium alloy. Heck, aluminum's used more now.
Never-ending progress for the sake of progress gave name to this era, the Dark Age of Technology. Humanity forgot why new technologies were made in the first place. Thought of what more can be invented or created was the only purpose driving humanity. Many technological wonders were built, every disease was eradicated, but so too came completely useless inventions and weapons of mass destruction. Technology achieved such unbelievable levels that the standard template constructs, computers capable of creating blueprints needed for creating basic tools and utility devices, became revered as artifacts of unfathomable worth and used to produce the highest class military equipment.
Basically, they're referring to the technology the Mechanicus use. Or what the Emperor was willing to share. Not that he was willing to share much, he kept a lot of it to himself to prevent any issues. But the Mechanicus is what they're referring to. They worship this technology.
All golden ages are destined to fade into twilight sooner or later, and calamity struck after 10,000 years, around the 25th millennium. The Men of Iron rebelled, starting a devastating war that almost wiped out humanity. Hundreds of billions died, and many planets were reduced to a nuclear wasteland. After this galaxy-spanning conflict ended, all usage of AI was banned, and every subsequent attempt to create one was met with instant execution. All throughout human-colonized worlds, extensive warp usage began creating mutated humans, among whom were psychers, men who could draw power from the immaterium to use sorcery. Progress-oriented society saw this as another opportunity to evolve, and encouraged experimentation with these unknown powers, especially since development through AI was no longer an option. However, this was a disastrous idea. Soon, weak-minded psychers got swayed by the demons that inhabited the warp. Consequently, cults, possessions, and wars started by power-seeking mages laid destruction upon most human worlds. These two apocalyptic-level events were enough to name the following era the Age of Strife, but soon a third source of...
Sounds a lot like D&D, where you get really powerful mages who are archmages, and then they basically become power-hungry psychos. One D&D setting was the Dark Sun. That setting did this exact same thing.
Calamity was thrown into the mix. Due to the decadence of the Eladari Empire, an advanced alien species, an enormous disturbance of the Immaterium, called the Warp Storm, was created that...
Yeah, that was Slaanesh. She came out and went boom. World boom. And she became the primary god among all of them. She devoured most of the Eldari gods. The Eldars. Well, most of them. One got saved by Nurgle, and he uses her to experiment on, and he calls it love, but, you know, it's not. And apparently she's so adept at being disease-free that Nurgle can't, you know, infect her with his diseases to test on her. So each test, he'll try to make something more plaguey and nasty and biley. But never works. She apparently is still around. Probably traumatized beyond belief, but one of the Eldar's gods did survive because it was saved. But yeah, Slaanesh, she killed most of the gods, and when Eldar die, she claims their souls. That's why the Eldar hope to be free from her one day. So yeah, sucks for them. They indulged themselves far too much.
It made travel through the warp impossible, isolating all star systems already devastated by wars and demons summoned by psykers. Few worlds remained inhabited by humans after 5 millennia of destruction, as most of them were either destroyed by aliens or the folly of humanity. One of the surviving worlds was Earth, now called Terra, and its moon Luna. There, tribes of techno-
Yeah, that would make sense. After like 5,000 years, certain things would be forgotten, and they would call it something different. Yeah, that would happen.
Barbarians were battling for dominance. A man who would later be known as the Emperor of Mankind, an impossibly powerful psyker, who at this point was 38,000 years old, decided that in order to make humanity
very old, but he's actually 48,000 years old because he's alive on the Golden Throne. At least we think he is. No one really knows. It's going to come down to the company who owns 40K, if they're ever going to expand on that. I mean, at some point, I'd like the Emperor to come back. Like, I don't want a repeat of fantasy where they just obliterate the world. I'd like to see, you know, the good guys win in this dark world, even though technically the humans aren't really the good guys, because literally they're kind of evil in their own right.
Great again, he would have to claim leadership. To that end, he began the creation of a genetically modified army. First, he poured all his knowledge, skill, and effort into handcrafting the perfect DNA for a soldier. The Adeptus Custodes were unrivaled warriors. However, the time
they are, man, the Custodes are way too strong. Like, they are insanely strong. They're stronger than Primarchs, and that's just crazy. But they're the personal guard of the Emperor because mass producing them wasn't possible.
Required to create one was so extensive that few of them could be created, so rather than serving as frontline infantry, they were used as personal bodyguards to the Emperor. The soon-to-be Emperor's second creation was the Thunder Warriors, who were capable of being mass-produced, but due to the fast manipulation of human DNA, they were short-lived, mentally unstable, and prone to mutations.
Yes, they were, but they got the job done. Man, the Emperor seems so cool, but then you see him do crap like this, and you're just like, kind of scummy.
After the Emperor united Terra, he had the Thunder Warriors all executed. To create a large, mass-produced army, the Emperor needed a superior DNA base. To achieve that, he created 20 sons based on his own DNA, each one inheriting one of the Emperor's traits. They were named Primarchs, and in order to enhance them, the Emperor merged warp entities with their souls. Because of this, the Chaos Gods saw them as a threat to their existence, and used their strength to scatter the Primarchs throughout the galaxy while they were still infants. However, not all was lost for the Emperor, for he used the Primarchs' gene seed to create the Adeptus Astartes, widely known as Space Marines. 20 legions were created. Each one started 10,000 strong, but over the years increased its size 10 times. Upon reaching Mars, the first surviving human civilization was found. Mechanicum, as they called themselves, was a machine cult seeking knowledge and technology of the past. The Emperor struck a deal with them called the Treaty of Olympus. The Mechanicum would supply the newly found Imperium with supplies, machines of war, and a fleet. In return, they would gain
It's no exaggeration. The Emperor is that big. He quite literally is. He's taller than his own sons. I mean, among his sons, Vulcan is just tall as heck.
Access to all found
Heck, he has some
technology
sons
in
even taller than
reclaimed
Vulcan.
Forge worlds, while remaining an autonomous part of the Imperium. The next 200 years are called the Great Crusade. The period lasted between 798 M30 and 005 M31. All human worlds were reclaimed from the Xenos, ergo aliens, or from humans, millions of whom joined the Imperial Army as Imperial Guard, soon becoming the primary fighting force. Not all humans were seen as friends. Many civilizations were beaten down and re-educated, while others were completely destroyed. During the Great Crusade, the Primarchs were found. All of them were found on human-inhabited worlds.
I did not know that 2 of the Primarchs out of the 20 were killed before they ever joined their Astartes. So I'm confused. What the heck happened to them?
Prior to the Emperor's arrival, almost all of them had become the leaders of their world. Each Primarch took command over the legion created from his gene seed. The first legion of Dark Angels was led by Lionel Johnson, the third of the Emperor's children by Fulgrim, the fourth of Iron Warriors by Perturabo, the fifth of White Scars by Jagatai Khan, the sixth of Space Wolves by Leman Russ, the seventh of Imperial Fists by Rogol Dawn, eighth of Night Lords by Conrad Kurz, ninth of Blood Angels by Sanguinius, the 10th of Iron Hands by Ferrus Manus, 12th of World Eaters by Angron, 13th of Ultramarines by Rabute Guilliman, 14th of Death Guard by Mortarion.
Guilliman. One of my favorite. Probably one of the most highly intelligent of all the Primarchs. Dude knows how to run a military organization and an entire Imperium. He did pretty well trying to recover it from its craziness. I mean, the rebellions he put down before they even became rebellions, and the High Lords, he smacked them around like they were nothing. There he was like, "Stop that! You're not going to get the advantage here."
15th of Thousand Suns by Magnus the Red, 16th of Lunar Wolves by Horus Lupercal, 17th of Word Bearers by Lorgar Aurelian, 18th of Salamanders by Vulcan.
Good old Vulcan. He's my favorite. Salamanders are one of the few good groups in this era that care about human life because they're so close to all their family members on the planet.
19th of Raven Guard by Corvus Corax, and 20th of Alpha Legion by Alpharius and Omegon. The 2nd and 11th Legion Primarchs were disposed of sometime after their reunification with the Emperor. However, all information regarding these events was classified or destroyed.
The Word Bearers, let's see, where are they at? The Word Bearers by Logar, man. Emperor told him not to do something, and man, he just went about and did it. Why did he not listen? The Emperor sent the command down, "Do not worship me," and he proceeds to make it a religion.
In just 200 years, nearly the entire galaxy was united under the banner of the Imperium. Most of the dangerous Xenos races were obliterated or on the run. Only one race was still considered a grave threat, the Orcs. This savage species could muster enormous warhordes called Wa under the leadership of their most powerful warlord. In the year 000 M31, the Emperor decided to eliminate the Orcish threat. He assembled a strike force to destroy the largest Wa in the Ulanor system. The Imperial Army, under the direct command of the Emperor, was composed of 600 spaceships, 8 million soldiers of the Imperial Guard, 3 Primarchs, and a contingent of 100,000 Space Marines, Horus Lupercal with the Lunar Wolves, Rabute Gilliam with the Ultramarines, and Jagatai Khan with the White Scars. The last part of the army was Mechanicum-operated war machines. Among them were...
I always found it weird that they set troops down when they could aerial bombard. I mean, I get if they're hiding underneath the surface, but it was weird to me that they would always have foot soldiers in an era where you could fly in space and aerial bombard a planet. It just seemed kind of weird. Especially since they had the virus cannons back then, too. And could have just virus cannoned the orcs. because all they did was kill the warlord and then left. Not total annihilation. This draws parallels to Netheril in D&D too, when Eom, one of the major leaders of Netheril at the time, went out and wiped out the orcs and completely nearly wiped out their species.
100 Titans. They were the biggest Imperial war machines, each one 100 meters tall, capable of mass destruction. The Orc army, under war boss Urlak Urg, was at least 5 times bigger, ranging in between 40 to 50 million soldiers. The Imperial army was...
Wow! But then again, orcs are kind of really big and dumb, at least in this world, and they just rampage. So I guess I see the point of the soldiers on the ground. I wonder what one Astartes is worth versus one orc. Like, is it like 10 to 1?
was split into 2 parts. One, under the command of the Emperor, consisted of all Titans, Ultramarines, White Scars, and the majority of the Imperial Guard. The second one, under command of Horus, consisted of Lunar Wolves, supported by about a quarter of the Imperial Guard. The Emperor led his contingent to attack the outer planets, drawing out most of the Orcs from Ulanor Prime, where the war boss resided. Taking advantage of the gap in the defences, Horus's army advanced straight to the capital. Thousands of dropships and drop pods shuttled the army, while heavy gunships deployed tanks and provided air support, surrounding Urlak Urg's heavily fortified palace. The Orcs attacked landing zones, spilling out of the palace, again falling into the trap of leaving important positions. Horus and the first company of Lunar Wolves teleported to the base of the main tower where Urlak Urg resided. He then took his 10 best soldiers to kill the war boss, who was defended by his 40 strongest orcs, the Nobs. Brutal melee combat ensued, where Horus dueled and defeated Urlak, throwing his dying opponent from the tower roof, effectively breaking the morale of the War. Of the 10 Terminators, only one survived, gore-drenched Ezekiel Abaddon, captain of the First Company. In the following hours, tens of thousands of orcs stuck between Terminator Space Marines and surrounding forces were slaughtered. Dozens of pretenders claimed the title of war boss, and the place of every claimant was taken by 2 more. Infighting caused more losses among the orcs than the Imperial army. Methodical massacres done by humanity resulted in the complete eradication of the orcs in Ulanor and all nearby systems in less than a year.
Okay,
Orcs'
so they
losses were so
did
devastating
wipe them out.
that the Emperor proclaimed the orcs would never again threaten the Empire.
Eom of Netheril made the same claim. Boy, how wrong they were.
In celebration, the entire planet Ulanor Prime was turned into a monument. After a victorious parade in front of the Emperor of Mankind, Malkador, the Regent of Terra, and 16 Primarchs, the Emperor surprised everyone by announcing his retirement to Terra. To lead the Great Crusade in his stead, he appointed Horus as a war master, the supreme leader of the army. Soon, more changes came, and the High Lords of Terra started to administer the Imperium. Armies were forced to carry civilians, such as journalists or propagandists, on board the spaceships. Taxes and levies were to be collected from newly conquered worlds. The dissatisfaction of the Primarchs only grew when the Emperor seemingly withdrew from the public eye, not involving himself with any known matters.
Okay, there's a lot of subtle nuances here, so I'll go and explain what I know. To begin with, the Emperor kept a lot of secrets. He didn't share everything with the Primarchs, which was part of the reason why they were growing uneasy and were having strange thoughts, all kinds of problems. See, the problem was the Emperor was hiding the fact that chaos existed. The Emperor believed that if he kept it a secret, he wouldn't have to worry about it. That classic out of sight, out of mind. That was not the case. So, because of his keeping secrets and not giving them the full information, some of his children, his Primarchs, fell to chaos. And some of the bigger problems were that some of the Primarchs believed themselves to be superior to regular humans, which they were. There's no denying that. So they believed that they should rule the humans and not have regular humans who ruled them. But the emperor didn't see it that way. That's why he set up the High Lords and the council. So there was a few uneasy things that they couldn't accept and a few things that they were just doing. Personally, I believe a lot of this could have been avoided if the emperor just told his sons what the initial goal was, to take down chaos, and that everything would fall in place after that. But he didn't do that, because when he disappeared from the limelight, he put his entire focus into fighting against chaos and preventing it. But that was his downfall.
Tensions were rising between the brothers and the state. In less than a year, legions almost started fighting over the use of psykers. The Council of Nicaea was to determine the future fate of the psykers. The emperor would pass the final verdict. The abolitionists reminded everyone how psykers led to the destruction of hundreds of worlds, how occultic practices stood against the morals of the Imperium of Man. The defenders of psykers spoke of the overwhelming importance of their powers. Moreover, they reminded everyone that the emperor was a psyker himself. The third option was presented by librarians, space marines who were also psykers. Their idea was to centralize the librarians' education under the emperor's supervision. This offer appeased almost all present. However, the speech of Magnus the Red, the second most powerful psyker after the emperor, decided the outcome. Full of pride, he spoke.
If I remember Magnus correctly, the emperor and him had a bit of a back and forth. See, I find it weird. The emperor had such a problem with psykers, but he was a psyker himself. But I mean, of course, he had many other abilities. Like, he's a perpetual, which is weird considering he's nearly dead. So how is he not coming back? That's even more confusing. I think the creators need to ice that out with the Golden Throne. He's also got godlike powers of creation. He possesses enormous knowledge that surpasses even that of the Dark Age, that he won't fully share with the Mechanicus, but he shares just enough to keep them involved. He's got a lot of different abilities too. Manipulation of matter. He's not a reality warper, that's for certain, because if he was, he'd be doing a lot more than this. But it's just weird to me that he himself had a problem with psykers, but he himself was a psyker. I mean, sure, he had control over his power, but that would almost entail the idea that he wasn't completely human. Oh well. Personally, the situation with him and Magnus was sad. I won't reveal it here, that's a spoiler, but it's sad.
Spoke about the pursuit of knowledge and how it should never be restricted. Everything that could be learned should be known, as there is no such thing as evil knowledge.
See, that's what pissed off the Emperor. Right there is when Magnus said that stuff. The speech is a lot more detailed if you look it up, but what he said there, that even evil knowledge is knowledge, it's just like D&D, where all magic knowledge, no matter what form it comes in, is its knowledge. It should not be restricted. And don't get me wrong, Mistra has an open book when it comes to share magic with everyone. And she likes it when people share magic with each other to help each other. But even she restricts access to some things, like 10th level magic and beyond. She restricts it to 9th level. So, I mean, it's not too far from the truth that there's some parallels to be drawn here between D&D and Warhammer 40k.
Downplaying the dangers of the warp, he instructed that illustrious humans should develop the science. He then spoke about Plato's cave, where humanity looked at the shadows, thinking that was reality. In such a place, the one who saw the real world should guide the others to enlightenment. The Emperor was angered at Magnus, as his son, who inherited psychic powers, was blinded by ambition. The Emperor's judgment was to ban psykers.
I again think if the Emperor wasn't keeping so many secrets and just shared what he knew with Magnus, he could help Magnus to understand why he needed to do this restriction. The Emperor created this unease between him and his Primarchs because of his own foolishness at not realizing he should have just told them everything. Share what you know, tell them why you're doing it, and explain to them the reason why. Now, the human condition is, unless I've tried it, I don't believe it. And that's a true, very true statement, because even though some things have been tried throughout history, younger, more ambitious people all the time will say, well, just because you failed doesn't mean I'll fail. And don't get me wrong, that leads to advancements in technology and science, but it's also the reason why some very, very, very bad things can happen. So it's a two-way street. For every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, I mean, choice begets consequence. It's the universe's one universal constant. Good old causality.
Seeing that resisting the temptations of the warp is too hard for humans. The verdict was followed by a threat that severe punishment would follow if any legion broke this law. Magnus had sworn that he would never use psychic powers again, a promise he never intended to uphold. Although the galaxy was again in human hands, cracks had already begun to form. The Primarchs were dissatisfied that the Imperium was ruled by the High Lords of Terra, not them. They were to listen to a brother, an equal, not the superior father, who now stopped involving himself in governing. How will the situation escalate? Find out in the next episode. Our series on the Warhammer 40k Horus Heresy will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it.
This, for me, is the best and easiest form to learn about the Horus Heresy through these guys' videos on YouTube, Wizards and Warriors, because not only do they animate it well, they provide a lot of subtle context, but not complete details. So it's like Cliff Notes, but with more Cliff Notes. And it fills you in, and it keeps you intrigued because of how detailed it is.
Please consider liking, commenting and sharing. It helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.
Loading. We're going to part 2 now, the Seeds of Chaos.
Although the galaxy was once again in human hands, the Emperor's control had begun to waver. The Primarchs grew dissatisfied when the militaristic side of the Imperium began waning in importance, and more power was given to normal humans. Many secretly broke the rules made by the Emperor, unknowingly opening themselves to the machinations of the Chaos Gods.
Again, I can't reiterate it enough, if the Emperor just told the Primarchs what and why he wanted to ban the use of the warp, then they probably wouldn't have done this. It wouldn't have gotten that bad.
While all this was happening, the newly appointed War Master, Horus Lupercal, struggled to keep his brothers in check and prove that he was a capable leader. Welcome to our series on Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy, explaining the origins of the Imperium and Chaos. This second video will explore how arrogance and stubbornness let Chaos corrupt the first Primarch. Also, start preparing yourself to serve the Emperor even in death by teaching your soul to pilot a giant robot. A hard task, but start by using our sponsor today, Mech Arena. It's a fast-paced mech combat game for mobile, in which you choose your favorite from a vast array of mechs and take them into quick and frantic PvP action, usually 5 versus 5. You play to rank up through various divisions, with new game modes being unlocked as you go along. Embrace the power of the warp by taking a mech that shoots lightning from its arms to melt away foes. Don't worry, you won't be corrupted by it, probably. There are thousands of pilot, mech and loadout setups to try, and loads of skins too, so you'll find something that works best for you. As you move up the divisions, there will be plenty of chances to level up equipment and get new, more deadly setups, plus as you get more experienced using your favourites, you'll become unstoppable. Since June is Pride Month, you can currently unlock free Pride skins for your mechs through gameplay, and there's an upcoming sci-fi event with a new chain gun heavy weapon, new maps and a new pilot. Start playing on Android, iOS or PC absolutely free by using our link in the description or QR code on screen. And you'll also get $30 of bonuses, 1 skin, 1 Prodigy crate, and 5,000 credits to get powerful fast. And here's our account, add us in game. From the start of the Great Crusade, the Emperor had plans for how the Imperium of Mankind would operate. The main aspect of his vision was to protect mankind from the war, which he recognized as the gravest threat to humanity. From the man-made calamities that struck humanity in the past, the tempting nature of the warp could bring about the ugly return of the bloody Psycho Wars. On many human-inhabited worlds during the Age of Strife, superstitions and religions formed. Most of them claimed that deep within the Immaterium, the gods were observing humanity. The Imperium of Man banned all religions in order to discourage attempts to explore or summon something from the warp. Instead, an ideology called the Imperial Truth was introduced. This dogma stated that there are no gods, magic or paranormal activities, and faith is abundant. An atheist society of reason and science would someday understand those seemingly impossible phenomena, so why should humanity look for baseless religious explanations and stall their progress? When the Great Crusade expanded, the conquered populations were indoctrinated into the Imperial Truth by the iterators who travelled with the army. However, one of the Primarchs, Lorgar Aurelian, and his Legion of the Word
this is where it starts.
Bearers did not propagate the Imperial Truth. Lorgar grew up on the planet Colchis, which was dominated by zealous religious fanatics. They believed that someday their god would come and save them. Lorgar, after achieving high religious standing, proclaimed that he had visions of a giant man in gleaming armor who claimed to be their god, and that he would soon arrive. This caused a schism in their church and a 6-year-long civil war. After the Emperor arrived on Colchis a year after the civil war ended in 857 M30, he was greeted as a god. Greatly displeased, the Emperor tried to stop being revered as a god, but both Lorgar and the planet population did not change their behavior. After taking control of a legion of word-bearers, Lorgar converted more worlds to his religion. The Emperor was full of anger, for this process would take a long time, and was in direct disobedience of his orders. He decided to punish Lorgar. In 903 M30, together with the Ultramarines, he destroyed the religious city of Monarchia.
I guess my question is, was Lorgar unconvincible? Like, could he not just have a council, pull him into a room and talk to him like, my son, stop with religion. It doesn't help. I don't want it. I just want you to be, my son, and do the Imperial Doctrine.
In front of Lorgar and his entire legion. After the eradicative deed was done, Lorgar was humiliated and reprimanded for the final time. Lorgar, who was completely broken by this event, was swayed by Erebus, the first chaplain of the Word-Bearers, that the Emperor is a god not worthy of his praise, and that there are other gods who would eagerly welcome such a zealous priest. This event marked the fall of the first Primarch to the ruinous powers. From now on, he would set up secret cults, amass tainted artifacts, and study unholy rituals. His machinations were never discovered. After only a century, there would be another troubling encounter with the gods Lorgar worshipped. In 001 M31, Horus, the newly appointed War Master, encountered human civilization on planet 6319. The local populace was open to talks, and Horus's most trusted advisor, Sejanus, was sent to negotiate. The ruler of this planet called himself the Emperor of Mankind, and after hearing that on Terra resides another man with the same title, who wanted to be the supreme leader of humanity, his attitude changed. Sejanus was executed and negotiations were broken. In response, the Imperial fleet came in and wreaked havoc, while 4 Space Marine companies and 6 Titans were deployed to obliterate the planet's capital city defenses.
They got
This
utterly
was hardly a
annihilated.
battle, as Space Marine armor was too tough to be penetrated by most of 6319's army. The only casualties were elite palace guards, nicknamed Invisibles for their almost perfect camouflage. After an unsuccessful suicide attack on Horus, the capital of 6319 fell into Imperial hands, and the majority of the local army was destroyed. The Space Marines withdrew on board spaceships, leaving the Imperial Guard to conquer the rest of the world. In the meantime, Mournival, the advisory body of Horus Lupercal, needed to replace one of the 4 members of his order after Sejanus' death. Although this was not a formal structure, it was a crucial tool for Horus.
Horus wasn't a warmonger. In every instance where he was forced to act was because of something the other side did. Sure, he wanted to bring them into the Imperium, but he was trying to negotiate and do it on steadfast terms. It's just something he did. It was a nice characteristic.
As a negotiator and politician, Horus wanted some radical ideas to be presented by his advisors, so he would look merciful by appearing more tempered than his advisors. Having the 4 most capable and trusted captains, who drastically varied in personalities, in the Mournival, their honest advice was always on point. The 4 members of the Mournival were Ezekiel Abaddon, the bloodthirsty captain of the 1st Company, Horus Aximand, the dark humoured captain of the 5th Company, Tarek Togadan, the light-hearted captain of the 2nd Company, and newly chosen Gavriel Locan, the phlegmatic captain of the 10th Company. While the preparations for the next campaign were made, most of the planet was incorporated into the Imperium of Mankind. Only one position held firm against the Imperial forces, an unconquerable fortress in the Whisperhead Mountains. With underground passages and bunkers, this heavily fortified position was manned by about 1,000 rebels, supported by artillery batteries. The attacking force consisted of 5,000 to 20,000 Imperial guardsmen. Waves of constant frontal assaults forced the rebels to fall back to their toughest fortress on the other side of the long and only bridge. Day after day, assaults were carried out, but the Imperial army, exposed and in the crossfire, was never able to cross the bridge. Morale was rapidly decreasing, as beyond the pointless assaults, the dead bodies were left to rot on the field of battle. Additionally, soldiers were troubled by interference in communication. An ominous voice would whisper in Vox radio every few seconds. "Samus, that's the only name you'll hear. Samus. It means the end and the death. Samus. I am Samus. Samus is all around you. Samus is the man beside you. Samus will gnaw on your bones. Look out. Samus is here." What was even more horrifying were sparse claims that a few soldiers heard this voice without a radio. After 6 weeks of constant failure, the 10th Space Marine Company, under the command of Gavriel Locan, was sent to assault the fortress. Spearheaded by the Terminators, they advanced on the bridge. None of the rebel weapons could harm them. This, however, didn't work the other way. Grenades and rockets blew up bunkers and artillery. Bolter bullets fired in the bunker's close quarters were able to sever limbs or completely dismember unarmored rebels. In 68 minutes, the fortress was captured without casualties. During the cleanup, Sergeant Xavier Jabal, who was resentful after being bypassed in promotion, called Captain Locan to inform him that Samus was found. Jabal, who was possessed by a demon, started killing Space Marines who arrived there, slaying 7 of them before dying. Yet even death did not stop his rampage, for a few minutes later, his
This, I believe, was the first instance of the Marines coming across a demon. Like, they've never seen one before, they didn't know about it, because again, the Emperor wasn't telling anyone.
corpse had risen again, this time appearing to be rotten, much larger, and almost unkillable. It took 91 bullets to bring down this monstrosity, with Gavriel Locan miraculously surviving. Horus Lupercal knew that the being that possessed Jabal came from the warp, yet he considered it to be some kind of Xenos, completely misunderstanding its nature. First, an
Again, Emperor's mistake. Should have shared that knowledge.
explanation of the warp is needed to understand what a demon is. The Immaterium is a dimension where the souls of the living go after death. These souls carry with them emotions that were with them in their final moments. Some emotions were vastly more common than others, and over millions of years, similar ones merged together, forming conscious entities that were regarded as gods. The four strongest ones that wielded destructive powers were the Chaos Gods. The first one was Khorne, born through anger, the god of fury, warfare and murder. The second one was Tzeentch, born through hope, the god of change and sorcery. The third was Nurgle, born through fear of death, the god of disease and decay. The fourth and youngest was Slaanesh, born through the decadence of the Eldari Empire, the god of excess and pleasure.
Nurgle, probably the most popular one, most well-known, probably because he's got the coolest name.
This destructive pantheon was constantly looking for more power that was gained by influencing material reality. Yet their efforts were impeded by never-ending infighting. None of the Chaos Gods wanted to give even the slightest edge to his kin. In experiments, they discovered that if some of their essences were split off, they could form a demon, a separate entity that would follow the whims of his father god. The demons could never die, as they were still part of the god who created them. Instead, after receiving a fatal blow, they would spend about 1,000 years reforming their body, an insignificant amount of time for an immortal god. Another benefit of using demons was that they could be absorbed into their god any time. This military asset became widely used in petty conflicts. Their attitude drastically changed when the Emperor of Mankind created the Primarchs, in whose creation some of the power of chaos was used. The Emperor's plans to unify the entire galaxy included genociding Xenos races, cleansing the galaxy from all Chaos cultists, and banning Psykers. All of these violent measures combined would drastically decrease the strength of Chaos. Thus, the ruinous powers decided to cease hostilities in order to defeat a common enemy. This fragile alliance hindered humanity's progress by scattering the Primarchs. Using the acquired time to infiltrate the Empire, the demons sowed distrust, promised to fulfill the deepest desires of humans, exploited weaknesses of character flaws or psychological wounds, and spread false prophecies to both humans and Xenos. All of this was done to break the monolithic structure of the Empire. One of the achievements of the demons was the creation of the warrior lodges inside the Space Marines legions. Theoretically, these secret organizations that functioned despite being banned by the Emperor were where all Adeptus Astartes could be equal, regardless of rank. Privates could freely talk with captains without worrying about consequences or feeling immense pressure. However, this also meant
Self-help groups.
that inside the legions, there were exclusive, secretive organizations where someone corrupted or misguided by chaos could influence thousands of genetically augmented super soldiers, with it being regarded as simply sharing their doubts if others did not accept their speech. In the Lunar Wolves Legion, being a member of a warrior lodge was so common that all Monovel members were part of it. Although Gavriel Loken was opposed to this idea, he joined out of curiosity. Yet the over 200-year-long preparations that the Chaos Gods made could no longer freely continue. Unbeknownst to all humans but Malkador, the Regent of Terra, the Emperor of Mankind was building a definitive solution to the warp's influence on humanity. Up to this point, to travel between the star systems, starships had to enter the Immaterium. There, the Chaos Gods had unobstructed access to manipulate or mutate humans. However, on Terra, a special construction was being made. This construction would be capable of creating special tunnels inside the warp, protected from all foreign influence. It could also have been a tool to conquer the Immaterium. This device was running on immense psychic power, so the Emperor designated it to be operated by Magnus the Red after it was done. The Chaos Gods couldn't allow this construction to finish, and so resolved to use all prepared tools and their combined powers to crush the Empire as soon as possible. In direct confrontation, the Chaos Gods stood no chance, for they were bound to another dimension. The Chaos Cultists, even bolstered by Lorgar Aurelian and his legion of wordbearers, were not enough to defeat the Imperium of mankind on their own. What allies will...
So Nesh appeared in the Immaterium for a little bit when she was formed, when she exploded their planet.
They find? Using secret organizations and exploiting psychological weaknesses, who will become corrupted by chaos? How radical and unhinged will their plans be? How big will the Chaos Army be? Find out in the next episode. Our series on the Warhammer 40k Horus Heresy will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.
All right, Horus Falls, the start of the Horus Heresy.
The long preparations of chaos have come to their final phase. The stage was set. Seeds of chaos landed on fertile soil surrounding Horus Lupercal. The heavy burden of leadership, combined with a few blunders, had taken its toll on Horus. Erebus, the man who had already corrupted a Primarch, was attempting to do it one more time. But there was no time or room for error. Will he be able to accomplish such a daunting task? Welcome to our series on Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy, explaining the origins of the Imperium and Chaos. This third video will explore Horus's failed campaigns and Erebus's plot. There's a lot of detail in the Warhammer 40k universe,
Not really
and if you
failed.
want to make your own
It's
universe
just
with anything
chaos
like
kept
this level of
interfering.
fidelity, we recommend using the world-building tools from our sponsor World Anvil. This is a program that manages a creative world, its history, people, creatures, places, factions, and relationships, all interlinked in a single, easy-to-use database that functions like a wiki for your world, making writing new content that's cohesive and immersive simple. Once you have your world fleshed out, use World Anvil to help you adventure there. You can update the state of the lore through World Anvil to track the progress of a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, or loads of other tabletop rule sets too. Alternatively, use the resources as a database for writing a novel. You can do the writing inside World Anvil to link everything up with the lore and design materials. This makes collaborating extra easy, as other writers can see what the official canon currently is at any time, and work together with a coherent central picture. This also makes it easier to show off to other people, since everything they need will be right there for them to browse. You can check out World Anvil via our link in the description. If you use our code WIZARDS, they'll give you 40% off all recurring memberships, so support our channel and your
Keep in mind,
imagination
these
by
videos are
taking a
like
look.
2 years old, so I doubt that discount code works.
While the campaign on 6319 was reaching its end, Horus's fleet received a distress signal from the planet 14020. From there, a small fleet of Blood Angels was sending a series of SOS messages that, over time, were becoming gradually incoherent, until the last signal consisted only of one sentence: "This planet is murder." The War Master sent full force to this seemingly cursed planet to investigate. Yet Horus wasn't the only one who decided to answer this call for help. Many other fleets from across different legions set out to this star system. The first ones to arrive were the Emperor's children, under the command of the Lord Commander Eidolon. When he arrived, the situation was looking grim. Planet 14020, now nicknamed Murder, was covered in a severe storm that blocked almost all communication, and didn't allow anything to land except drop pods, and prevented the deployment of anything other than infantry. Lord Commander Eidolon, after hearing that Horus's fleet was only days away from arriving, decided to send all of his space marines to the surface, repeating the blunder of the Blood Angels. Scattered in the atmosphere, small groups of the
All trying to outdo one another, like competing kids. Another thing the Emperor should have curbed, but hey, That's what happens when you don't share.
Parties landed in a thick, foggy forest of trees similar to bamboo. Disoriented and lost, they were ambushed by the local species, the megarachnids. These insects were extremely fast, and their armored carapace could withstand bolter fire.
Sounds like the
Every
Tyranids.
skirmish with these spiders, each lasting only a few seconds, ended with some Space Marine casualties. The largest surviving group was under the command of Captain Saul Tarvitz, a stalwart and principled commander, and Captain Lucius, an extraordinary fencer. Eventually, they uncovered the fate of the Blood Angels, whose bodies were impaled on giant white trees. Saul Tarvitz decided that letting the Space Marines rot up there would be a grim indignity, and thus used all of the company's explosives to destroy those trees. However, this act of honor had unforeseen consequences. These trees were producing the storms in the atmosphere. With it gone, the newly arrived lunar wolves dropped to the surface to save their fellow Astartes. Over the next 6 months, several fleets arrived, most notably the Blood Angel fleet under the command of the Primarch Sanguinus, and Wordbearers fleet under the command of the first chaplain Erebus. During this bloody and lengthy campaign, the megarachnids continued to show up in force, this time with more powerful and larger subspecies, the scariest ones capable of cutting deep into Titan's armor. Throughout the brutality, one mystery remained. In orbit of Murder, a Xeno satellite was constantly sending indecipherable melodic messages. Until one day, 3 enormous spaceships, larger than any Imperial vessel, exited the warp. As it turned out, they were Interrex, a human race that achieved harmony with alien species. Several years ago, they defeated the megarachnids and took away their space-traveling technology. They were the ones who left this enigmatic message, a warning not to enter this planet. The Interrex differed a lot from the Imperium in that they were much more peaceful. They sought collaboration with other civilizations, even Xenos, and their technology was more advanced. While most of the Imperials were eager to destroy this civilization, Horus wanted to integrate them into the Imperium, because of the recent events on 6319, where human civilization was destroyed. Not wanting for that to happen again, he tried his best to persuade the Interrex into joining the Empire. The two factions sat down for negotiations on the planet of Zenobia, but soon the talks were becoming unreasonably lengthy. Interrex, for some reason, were very cautious around the Imperials. During the key talks in the residence of the planet Gubernator, it was revealed that Interrex were afraid that the Imperium was serving chaos. Unfortunately, this revelation came too late. Erebus, unknowingly to everyone, had stolen Anathema, the Chaos Sword, from the Museum of Warfare. The Imperium was branded as a force of chaos, and war broke out. After destroying Interrex forces on Zenobia, Horus deemed that they were no longer any threat, and left them to exist in their corner of the galaxy until some other Imperial fleet would arrive there in an undisclosed future. After spending almost a year in the field, the War Master was overwhelmed with the amount of requests for his help. It seemed like his brothers were trying to challenge his authority by proving that he was unworthy of such a title, while
they were.
Officials bombarded him with administrative requests, mostly regarding taxation. Horus could not understand why taxes had to be collected so soon, as it would certainly spark rebellions. However, one of these requests sounded reasonable. Erebus, who helped him in recent campaigns, wanted help for a week-long campaign on the Davin system. On the way, Horus became increasingly gloomy. The failure to bring 2 human civilizations to the Imperium, the pointless war on the planet Murder, and the ongoing and never-ending political struggle took a toll on his mental health. Consequently, he distanced himself from the Mournival in favor of Erebus. On arrival at Davin, it was revealed that this Imperial world had rebelled against the authority of the Empire. This was the first time such a thing had happened, but due to the charismatic persuasion of Erebus, Horus himself led his forces onto the planet's moon where the traitors resided. The force consisted of 1,000 Space Marines and 3 Titans, with the rear being protected by Imperial Guardsmen. En route to the moon, a message was heard on the Vox radio. The same voice that was heard on 6319 spoke ominous messages. This time, Samus spoke to kneel before Nerglith, yet before it could devastate morale, It was isolated on an unused radio frequency, and its place of origin was tracked, a feat which had not been possible last time. Subsequently, the army landed close to the signal center. The surface, which 60 years ago was a cold desert, was now a rotting swamp, emitting gas which created a thick, toxic fog. During the advance, the force started to break formation due to low visibility. Suddenly, rotting corpses rose from the murky water. Chaos ensued. The depth of the swamp began drowning men. All cohesion was lost. The Titans couldn't do anything until one of them spotted an unidentified flying vessel and decided to shoot it down.
Sheesh, they really do jump the gun. Instantly attacking everything, destroying it. They cuckoo crazy.
This was friendly fire, as the ship belonged to civilians who wanted to see the battle, but the burning wreck served as a lighthouse amidst the treacherous swampy fog. Now rallied, the Astartes reached the command post of the enemy without much resistance. On the surface lay a crashed Imperial ship, left on Davin as part of a garrison. Titans bombarded the hull, creating entrances for the Space Marines. The forces were split to enter the ship from 4 sides, while 2 companies guarded the entrance. Horus rushed directly to the bridge. On the way, the damaged ship started to collapse and flipped on its side. At this moment, the corpses renewed their offensive, this time bolstered by horned demons. The situation was grim.
Boy, Chaos sure went all out on this one.
Inside, scattered forces couldn't establish communications, while on the outside, the soldiers ran out of bullets. The battle was decided on the bridge. There, Horus dueled and killed the traitor Eugen Temba, but not before being wounded. In the moment of the traitor's death, all rotten forces lost their lives instantly. While regrouping in front of the destroyed ship, Horus collapsed, his seemingly small shoulder wound insistently bleeding, with any attempt to patch it not working. Horus was transported on his flagship, where hundreds of civilians were waiting for his triumphant return. Instead, they were met with a stampede of Astartes, who didn't even slow down as they created a path for the unconscious War Master. Even with the full might of Imperial healing, the only thing achieved was the buying of time. Gaviel Lokan, with Tarik Togaden, went to the surface to recover the blade that wounded Horus. They discovered that it was the blade that was stolen from the Interrex, and that the only person it could belong to was Erebus. Terrified by their discovery, they rushed back to the ship, only to discover that Horus was not there. While they were absent, Erebus, founder of the Lunar Wolves Warrior Lodge, called an emergency meeting. He convinced the remaining 2 members of the Moneval to send Horus to the Temple of the Serpent on Davin's surface, where ritual healing could bring even the dead to life. In the next 9 days, the fate of the War Master would be known. Behind the closed doors, Horus was being given visions from Chaos. Yet he had a defender, Magnus the Red, who was confident that he would be able to defeat Chaos influence. In his dream, Horus saw a beautiful world full of nature that was being transformed into industrial hell. Lost wolves started chasing him, reminding him of his identity as the Lunar Wolves Primarch. He was then guided by Sejanus, his dead advisor, who in fact was Erebus in disguise. Horus was shown visions of the future, where the Emperor was a god of mankind, where entire worlds existed for the single goal of worshipping the Emperor, where beside the Emperor only 9 Primarchs stood, and Horus was not among them.
But it was a fake
He was then shown
Chaos.
a vision of the past. On Terra, deep inside the Emperor's laboratory, he saw the moment of the scattering of the Primarchs. Yet in the vision, the Emperor caught the infants prior to their abduction and then decided to let them go, dooming them to a hellish life. After this vision, Magnus caught up. Using sorcery, he dispelled the illusion of Erebus and begged Horus not to let the temptations reach his heart. Horus was torn. By using sorcery, Magnus had broken the Edict of Nicaea, but Erebus was no better, duplicitously hiding himself behind the illusion. Neither man's advice could be trusted. Ultimately, Horus decided to stand against the Emperor, to lead a rebellion against the changes that were happening in the Imperium. Magnus, now knowing that Horus was truly lost, could not allow his rebellion to grow. He decided that the Emperor must be warned. For him, this information couldn't wait, so he prepared the strongest warp message he could create, sending a projection of his mind alongside it to break all obstacles Chaos would surely throw on his way to Terra. The signal was so strong that the Chaos gods decided to remove all obstacles in its way. With full force, it reached Terra, breaching the defenses that the Emperor had set up. It tore a hole in a fragile construction of the secret project of the Emperor. Demons could now freely enter Terra directly from the warp, without need of possession or summoning rituals. Thousands of them invaded Terra through this hole. Millions died before Terra was cleansed. The Emperor had to sit on the Golden Throne, a contraption that allowed him to control his project to close the gap. If he rose from the throne, the hole would open again. Thus, the Overlord of Humanity became chained to his seat, not allowing him to participate in the upcoming conflict. The Emperor was enraged at Magnus, who destroyed key infrastructure, let in demons on Terra, and disregarded his pledge to never use powers of the warp again. The Legion of Space Wolves, under the command of the Primarch Leman Russ, was dispatched to punish Magnus. Realizing what he had done, Magnus decided to passively await the coming punishment from the Emperor. In the end, warnings that he had completely disregarded were true. He ordered his fleet to disperse and leave his homeworld, Prospero. When his legion was on the planet, he cut his planet from all communications with the outside, including methods that used sorcery. While on the way to punish Magnus, Leman Russ received help from Horus, who gave him 5,000 Astartes and a message saying that Magnus wouldn't surrender. This convinced the Space Wolves to prepare for the assault. On arrival, Leman Russ decided to give one last chance to the Thousand Sons. He sent a messenger to treat with his foes, yet the person he chose was a Chaos agent and did not deliver the message. After receiving no response, orbital bombardment started. This resulted in genocide, for the population of the world was slaughtered, along with most of the Legion. Only one key city remained, the capital Tizca, that was shielded by sorcerers. Despite it all, Magnus was still ordering his soldiers to stand down and accept the punishment, but his forces didn't want to die. 10,000 Thousand Sons, hundreds of whom were Psykers, and 3 Titans prepared to make a final stand. The landing force, led directly by Leman Russ, consisted of 73,000 Space Wolves, 5,000 Sons of Horus, 40,000 Imperial Guardsmen, and 12 Titans. They were supported by 3,000 Sisters of Silence, the anti-psychic warriors, and 1,000 Adeptus Custodes, personal guards of the Emperor. As soon as they landed, the massacre started. Civilians were shot on sight, buildings were burned. Seeing this brutality, the civilians started forming a militia. Despite their numbers reaching hundreds of thousands, their military value against attacking Space Marines was marginal. The defenders started digging themselves into destroyed buildings, upon seeing that the custodians instantly attacked to prevent a drawn-out city battle. Despite their incredible martial prowess, they were vulnerable to psychic attacks. Suffering losses, they maintained pressure until the Sisters of Silence arrived, disabling sorcery, forcing the Thousand Sons to retreat. The first line of defense was broken, yet an ace from the sleeve was pulled. The Titans, shielded by a team of Psykers, could freely attack without any damage being dealt in return. Space Wolves that were too eager to chase retreating forces were struck by both psychic attacks and Titan fire. The defenders were losing too much ground in their retreat, but if they could hold out for a little longer, Magnus would join the battle and maybe even save them. To that end, the wedge formation under Leman Russ had to be stopped. Daring attacks were made, and powerful spells were slung, but Primarchs were resistant to these sorts of attacks. In the end, the counter-offensive was crushed. To make matters worse, overusing powers of the warp, already weakened by the presence of the Sisters of Silence, brought chaos powers into the Thousand Sons' sorcery. Soon, psychic augmented machines started malfunctioning, the most devastating being the explosions of the Titans. With the Titans destroyed, all remaining forces retreated to the pyramid where Magnus resided, and all civilians were evacuated. Finally, in the last moment of battle, Magnus joined the fight. His powerful sorcery killed hundreds until Leman Russ arrived. Even resistant to sorcery, he felt the impact of Magnus's attacks. After a fierce duel, Leman broke Magnus's spine. Dying on the floor, Magnus heard the call from the warp. The voices of chaos promised that he and the remainder of his legion would survive if only he would pledge his servitude to the chaos god Tzeentch. Magnus agreed, saving just over 1,000 space marines, mostly sorcerers. This event, known as the Burning of Prospero, was one of the greatest misunderstandings in the history of the Imperium. An entire planet was executed and 60,000 suns died, with the rest joining chaos. All of it started with Horus's fall to chaos. Misunderstandings and the machinations of chaos had already corrupted 3 Primarchs. How many more would fall? Find out in our next episode. Our series on the Warhammer 40k Horus heresy will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.
Battle of Istan Van 3.
As the corrupted Warmaster prepared for war, chaos influence spread like wildfire, setting the stage for the conflict which will be remembered as the Horus Heresy. More Primarchs were to be corrupted, armies needed to be gathered, loyalty had to be affirmed, supplies had to be stocked, and supply lines needed to be created. Welcome to our series on Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy, explaining the origins of the Imperium and Chaos. In this 4th video, we will explore Horus's preparations for the war and the crucial Istvan campaign. And we've even got an offer for you from a game the Chaos Gods would absolutely love, a game where you merge bloodlines to make new powerful warriors. It's Bloodline Heroes of Lethus. This is a fantasy hero collecting RPG, where you build a kingdom and collect champions to defend it, but the twist is that you can create new, unique champions by merging bloodlines of various kinds. This gives you thousands of possible hybrids and strategies to try against the various challenges you'll face, raising the perfect heirs for your needs. The game is available for free at our link in the description or the QR code on screen if you're on PC. Every 2 weeks a new bloodline is added. For example, they recently added the Tide Raisers, demigods of the sea, who can be married into your clan to provide their unique abilities to your already massive pool of options. Use such powerful new abilities for the endless challenges of PvP to win unique champions and glory besides, all with beautiful 3D graphics even on mobile devices. Check out the game via our link in the description below or QR code on the screen on PC, and you'll also get a special starter pack worth $20, featuring a summoning crystal, 100,000 gold and 100 diamonds. For even more free stuff, be one of the first 30 people to leave their account ID and username in the comments, and you'll get a legendary champion Luxuriant for free, one of the best mages in the game, giving you a nice head start.
Yeah, we all know what that's about.
After a deadly encounter on Davin, the chaos-corrupted Horus needed to convince his legion to join his cause. To that end, the Sons of Horus and the World Eaters travelled to a star system occupied by the Oretian Technocracy, a newly discovered human civilization that used almost the same technology as the Imperium. During the negotiations, it was revealed that the Oretians possessed a functioning STC, an artifact the Mechanicum would do anything to get their hands on. Now having 2 reasons for war, Horus killed the Technocracy's diplomats and a brutal conflict broke out. During this 9-month-long campaign, the Sons of Horus and the World Eaters were being trained to fight soldiers that looked similar to Space Marines. Many warriors had trouble brutally killing people who were so similar to them. This led to the rapid growth of the warrior lodges. Those who didn't join were sent over and over again to the battlefield until they died or joined. Ultimately, around 70% of the Legion became part of the Lodge.
Sheesh.
However, Gavriel Loken and Tarek Togaden, members of the Moneval, decided to sever ties with this organization. They couldn't comply with their increasingly hegemonic nature, especially after the order to put their Primarch before the Emperor. Additionally, the Mechanicum pledged to give Horus full support for the recovered STCs, giving Horus an edge in the supply axis against the Emperor's forces. The Mechanicum, knowing that the upcoming conflict would be against Space Marines, provided weapons effective against them. The lengthy war against the Aretian technocracy granted the War Master many allies. The Horus Rebellion had the support of his legion, the Mechanicum, and the World Eaters. Additionally, while his soldiers were fighting, Horus was engaged in diplomacy and managed to win the Death Guard and the Emperor's children over to his cause. To cement their alliance, these 4 legions banded together to forge the single largest force since the Battle of Ulanor and set out for a campaign. They ventured to the Istvan system, where the local populace had overthrown imperial authority. The War Master's army first set out to destroy Istvan Extremis, a planetoid equipped with long-range scanners that could detect any surprise attacks. The Death Guard and Emperor's children were deployed and started a 2-pronged assault. The rebels didn't try to surrender or flee, not showing even a hint of fear, even as they were slaughtered indiscriminately. Soon it was discovered that they were possessed by war singers, psychers who were augmenting sounds to control humans and using sonic waves as a weapon. After one of these war singers was located and slain, the possessed soldiers lost any will to fight and started crying uncontrollably. With the war singer dead, the station was captured, and an attack on the capital of Istvan III, Coral City, was possible. The Istvanians had been preparing their capital for war for years now, transforming it into a labyrinth of trenches, underground passages, hundreds of bunkers, minefields, and hidden artillery batteries. All of it protected the only passage to the city, built on a mountain slope. A frontal assault on the city would be costly and lengthy. However, the Istvanians had not prepared for a drop pod attack directly on the city. Horus chose this tactic, handpicking an elite squad of Space Marines loyal to the Emperor, then sent them down to the surface. The only ones who managed to dodge this fate were Nathaniel Garrow from the Death Guard, who got injured on Istvan Extremis and were sent to a frigate, Eisenstein, and Saul Tarvitz from the Emperor's Children, who got suspicious and swapped his position. All in all, 1 Titan and over 100,000 Space Marines were sent to the surface in 4 locations. The Death Guard and a Titan were sent to the fortifications before the city. Their task was to pin the enemy and gradually root them out. The World Eaters were to secure major roads inside the city. The Sons of Horus were sent to capture the temple and kill war singers as quickly as possible. The Emperor's Children were sent to the palace, where the leader of the rebels resided. All of these tasks were slowly realized, achieved as millions of possessed civilians were attacking relentlessly. The first ones to accomplish their task were the Emperor's Children, when Lucius killed in a duel the former planet gubernator Vardus Praal. While steady progress was being made on the world's surface, Horus started the plan's second phase from orbit. He began priming for an orbital bombardment of virus bombs, warning only those loyal to him within the Titan crew. Saul Tarvitz discovered this horrific plot and descended to the surface with the aid of Nathaniel Garrow, who, after protecting Saul's shuttle, fled to Terra to bring news of treachery. Saul was too late. His warning did not reach all of the Space Marines, with only a few managing to hide in airtight installations, be it bunkers, basements, or catacombs, before the bombs dropped. The first wave of the bombardment was the virus bombs that turned all life on the planet into sludge and gas.
That's right.
8 billion died in a matter of an hour. Moments later, a single shell ignited these gases, creating a planet-wide raging inferno, scorching anyone who thought it was safe to emerge.
Those virus bombs, they use them to wipe out Tyranids. I think they do.
From their hideouts. After discovering that some of the loyalists survived, Angron, the World Eater Primarch, descended to the surface to finish the purge. This act angered Horus, who was preparing to finish the fight with conventional orbital bombardment and start the Horus heresy with initiative. Yet due to the short temper of Angron, he was now pinned to Istvan III. The loyalists were scattered rudderlessly throughout the city and were easy targets for Angron's army, until he encountered the World Eaters he betrayed. Laying eyes upon someone who had sent them to death, the World Eaters furiously charged, resulting in a drawn-out engagement. Many fought with missing limbs, refusing to die until their revenge on Angron could be enacted. Although they ultimately failed and all died, it gave enough time for the remaining loyalists to gather in the Coral City Palace. The only ones who didn't reach it were the Death Guard, who remained in the trenches. While they had time to retreat, and some even did, both of their commanders died in the virus bombardment.
Sheesh.
Isolated and without any orders, independent squads used this time to familiarize themselves with the surrounding fortifications, turning them into a death trap. Angron, now without momentum, couldn't breach the palace in a frontal assault. Horus decided to punish his allies for their incompetence, sending them to the surface to help Angron. The Death Guard allowed Nathaniel Garrow to escape the system, and the Emperor's children allowed Saul Tarvitz to stay on the ship, which consequently sparked the beginning of the battle to come. At this point, the remaining Loyalist forces consisted of about 30,000 Space Marines in the palace, under the command of Saul Tarvitz, and an unknown number of the Death Guard in the trenches, but their numbers probably were below 5,000 men. The heretics, meanwhile, descended with the full force of 3 legions, numbering over 130,000 Astartes with armoured support.
Wow.
Their armies split and acted independently. The palace was attacked from all possible directions. The Emperor's children tried to find an opening in the flanks, while Angron attacked from the front. Their attack crashed headlong with a meticulously laid out defense plan. In the center, Angron was ignored, and instead fire was focused on his soldiers. This created gaps in the attack line that isolated Angron and forced him to retreat, albeit wreaking havoc and devastation in the wake of his withdrawal. On the flanks, a multitude of tactics were used to bait overconfident attackers into traps or crossfires. This cycle continued day by day, and casualties mounted on both sides. Meanwhile, the Death Guard fought with themselves in the fortifications. A larger attacking army, under the command of the Primarch Mortarion himself, sprung traps one by one, be it minefields, crossfires, or ambushes. Whenever he thought that it was the end of the hidden loyalists, another group launched a surprise attack, luring reacting forces into even more traps. This continued for 3 months, but could not last forever, for the defenders' numbers were thinning. In the final days of this prolonged siege, inside the palace, hundreds were wounded, with only a couple of thousand surviving. It was clear that the end was nearing. Resentful after being snubbed of a command post in favor of Saul Tarvitz, Lucius opened a path for the Lord Commander Eidolon inside the palace. Even with the defense line compromised, Saul Tarvitz managed to encircle Eidolon's forces and crush them, with only a handful escaping. But the damage was done. His forces, only a couple of hundred strong, couldn't protect all entrances, and everyone in the infirmary was killed. Around the same time, Mortarion managed to purge all of the trenches. With the battle practically won, Horus decided to show off his strength, sending his legion to the surface. Upon seeing this, Gaviel Loken and Tarik Torgaden sneaked out to kill 2 remaining members of the Moneval. The attempt failed, ending with Tarik dead and Loken buried beneath the rubble. When the combined traitor forces rallied in front of the palace, they shelled it to soften the defenses, but instead the damaged palace collapsed. The traitor armies retreated and bombarded the remains from orbit. In the end, these legions lost about 50% of their strength. These losses, although substantial, would be negligible if the traitors could still maintain the initiative and an element of surprise. However, this was not to be. The valiant 3-month-long last stand by the loyalists on Istvan would have been forgotten to the whole galaxy if not for the frigate Eisenstein. 3 months earlier, when Saul Tarvitz descended to the surface with the warning of the virus bombardment, Nathaniel Garrow managed to narrowly escape from the Istvan system. His ship was heavily damaged and its warp shields were destroyed. Inside the Immaterium, a storm was raging, completely blinding the astropath. Soon demons boarded the ship and started slaughtering the crew. The only way to escape this life-or-death situation was to do an emergency warp exit. In this maneuver, the astropath died, and the ship was stranded in an empty point of space.
Sheesh.
With enough supplies for the month, and the closest star years away in sublight speed travel, they were doomed to die. Nathaniel Garrow decided to bet their lives on a risky gamble. He detonated their warp engine, hoping that someone would notice it and check their position. The explosion almost destroyed the ship, with all of its systems ceasing to function. Now they would all freeze to death in just a few days. But the gamble paid off. Soon the fleet of the Imperial Fists, under the command of the Primarch Rogal Dorn, arrived with help. This fleet had been trapped inside the warp storm, like the Eisenstein. However, the detonation of the warp engine served as a lighthouse, allowing them to escape. On Rogal Dorn's flagship, the Phalanx, Garrow was interrogated. His news of Horus's, Angron's, Mortarian's, and Fulgrim's betrayal only angered Dorn. He could not believe that it was possible. The one who convinced him was a civilian from Horus's fleet, Euphrati Keeler. She showed photos of Horus ordering the execution of all civilians in his fleet while he started the virus bombardment. Even with such conclusive evidence, Rogal Dorn didn't want to accept the truth. When the fleet arrived at Terra, the survivors from the Eisenstein were thrown into prison on Luna. There, Sisters of Silence for weeks kept a watchful eye on them. It seemed impossible that the soldiers had betrayed their beloved Primarch, escaped a giant fleet in a small frigate, survived warp jump without warp shields, then encountered demons, something only a select few knew of. These survivors had to be exceptional fighters, even for a Space Marine standard, have unwavering loyalty to the Emperor, and be resistant to the temptations of chaos. Seeing their commitment after killing another demon inside the prison, Malkador, the Regent of Terra, released them from their confinement. Nathaniel Garrow, for his part, was chosen as the first Knight Errant. This small group of Space Marines served directly under Malkador. They were sent on covert operations to complete vital tasks throughout the entire Horus heresy. After gathering many like-minded Astartes, including Gavial Loken, they would eventually transform into Grey Knights, the secret anti-demon Space Marine chapter. But there was one more consequence of the Eisenstein's arrival on Terra. Almost all of the survivors believed that the Emperor was the god of mankind. This illegal belief was backed up by proof. Euphrati Keeler, while still in Horus's fleet, managed to banish a demon by holding the pendant of her religion and cursing it to return to the Immaterium on the Emperor's name. This achievement made her a saint for all believers, and soon many more started joining her religion, especially after Kirill Sinderman, chief propagator of Imperial Truth, joined the church. Euphrati did not stop with her miracles. She was prophetic, her words always reaching the deepest part of the soul, and soon she began banishing even more demons. On Terra, she was confined in a prison as an anomaly. Even imprisoned, her influence was converting thousands to her cause. This was the beginning of abandoning the Imperial Truth in favor of faith in the God Emperor. The Horus heresy had begun. The purge of 4 legions was successful, and still one ship escaped. One small frigate that changed the fate of the war, relaying the message to Terra and freeing Imperial Fists from the warp storm, all using the time that the Loyalists had bought on Isfan III. True heroes who stood their ground for 3 months against an overwhelming force. Sheesh. How will Horus adapt his plans? How will the Emperor react to this betrayal? Find out in the next episode. Our series on the Warhammer 40k.
The Emperor is conflicted because it's his son. But it's weird that he cared so much about Horus. But Lorgar, of the Word Bearers, he flatlined because of the religion. So, I don't know, maybe he has favorites.
Horus Heresy will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one. The Horus Heresy had started. The traitors, after a large setback,
Drop site massacre on Istan 5. Civil War.
Were awaiting the Imperium's reaction. Soon it would be known if the preparations of chaos were enough. A massive army was gathering to crush the rebellion before it could spread. On the planet Istvan 5, everything would be decided. Welcome to our series on Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy, explaining the origins of the Imperium and Chaos. In this 5th video, we will explore the Imperium's reaction to the Horus Heresy and the opening stage of the war. There's only one war large enough to rival what the Horus Heresy would become, and you'll find it in the sponsor of this video, Nexus War. It's a futuristic strategy game where your job is to collect powerful heroes, build your civilization, and win the huge ongoing wars. You'll take heroes from the 4 races of the galaxy, humans, Izans, Aukus, and Thayers, who you'll level up to lead your armies in battle. In fact, you can get Zafar, a seriously powerful hero, for free, just by logging in for 7 days as a new player. What is your goal? To claim the Infinity Throne and achieve ultimate glory, not unlike the goal of Horus himself. It's also multiplayer, allowing you to ally with millions of players all over the galaxy to enact team strategies and fight together in real-time battles. For example, face the Siege of Aeons, a 30 versus 30 alliance battle requiring skill and teamwork. Or head out to explore the open world to find new powers to employ amid the ruins, treasures, and foes that await you on the massive and mysterious map. You'll also be building up your personal city to a galactic megafortress and recruiting and training heroes and mechs to battle your enemies. Download Nexus War for free via our link in the description and use code NWHeroPack to get $100 in free items, but that's only for the first 100 people to use it, so get in there quick. In 005 M31, on the eve of the Istvan III campaign, where loyalists were to be purged, the War Master devised a scheme to thin out the forces that opposed him. To that end, he sent as many legions to the outer regions of the galaxy as he could. The Ultramarines were to fortify their home region and await aid from the Wordbearers, being told a massive Orc army was headed there. This army did not exist, for it was a mere fabrication of Horus. The Blood Angels were sent to Cygnus Prime to combat unknown Xenos, but only demons awaited there for the loyalist Space Marines. The last legion that Horus managed to send away from the conflict were the Dark Angels.
Yeah, if the Ultramarines had been sent away, they probably would have turned the tide of the entire war. Among Astartes, the Ultramarines are the most viewed and seen by the public eye.
They were sent to combat the human Xeno Confederation called the Gordian League, a campaign that would last for just over a year. Even with so many loyalist forces removed, the balance of power still wasn't in Horus's favor. An additional ally would be helpful. Fulgrim, one of the corrupted Primarchs, was convinced that he could convince Ferrus Manus and his Legion of Iron Hands to betray the Emperor. To achieve that, he travelled to meet his dear friend and brother while the purge on Istvan III was happening. The two spoke in private. Contrary to Fulgrim's anticipation, Ferrus declined to join Horus and called out his madness. The two Primarchs engaged in a short duel, which Fulgrim won, but couldn't bring himself to kill his brother. While Ferrus Manus was unconscious, Fulgrim retreated to his spaceship and bombarded the Iron Hands fleet, crippling its combat effectiveness. Ferrus Manus was the second, after Nathaniel Garrow, to send news of Horus's treachery to Terra. Now the Imperium knew beyond any doubt that the War Master was in open rebellion. A new leader of the army was needed. Rogal Dorn was named Lord Commander of the Imperium. He decided to bring a swift end to the Horus Heresy. A giant army was sent to the Istvan system. 7 legions in total were deployed directly to Istvan, not bothering to regroup beforehand. Meanwhile, on Mars, the Mechanicum, who swore allegiance to Horus during the war with the Oretian technocracy, started a revolt called the Schism of Mars. 2 forces battled there, those loyal to the Emperor, the Martian Mechanicum, that would eventually transform into Adeptus Mechanicus, and those loyal to Horus, the New Mechanicum, soon to be known as the Dark Mechanicum. These forces were similar in size. However, the traitors had a clear advantage due to the influence of chaos. The scrap code was a virus of chaos origin that caused mass malfunction of machines, production facilities, and communication devices. To make matters worse, the traitors broke every taboo in the conflict, be it biological or nuclear weapons, using the full arsenal of their technology. When the first outside help arrived, led by the Imperial Fist's second-in-command, Captain Sigismund, the battle was almost over. Sigismund decided to evacuate the Forge city he landed in with as much equipment as possible, leaving the rest of the scattered resistance to die. With such a threat so close to Terra, Rogal Dorn decided to split his own legion in two. Most of the Space Marines, the flagship Phalanx, and he himself stayed in the solar system, blockading Mars and fortifying all other parts of the solar system, while the rest of the Imperial Fist's fleet was sent to fortify the strategic Thal system. Still, there were some other loyalist successes. The Dark Angels, despite being pinned down, managed to free a small force led by their Primarch, Lionel Johnson. This unanticipated force swiftly captured Tiamat, a traitor forge world full of siege weapons. In
Tiamat? Tiamat. I guess that's not too shocking.
the orbit of Tiamat, Leon met Perturabo and the Legion of Iron Warriors, who were on their way to Isfahan. Leon gave away the newly acquired weapons to crush Horus while he returned to his legion. Meanwhile, the traitors were fortifying Isfahan V. On the Urgal Plateau, an old pre-imperial fortress was renovated. Surface-to-orbit batteries were built, anti-air missiles were set up, trenches were dug, walls were repaired and expanded with bulwarks and redoubts, and void shields capable of blocking orbital bombardments were installed. This fortress was guarded by 4 battered legions, the Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, Death Guard, and World Eaters, 200,000 Space Marines in total, supported by over 1 million traitor Imperial army and multiple Titans. In the following year, 006 M31, the Loyalists arrived. The first were the Salamanders, under the command of Vulcan, followed by the Raven Guard, under the command of Corvus Corax, and the Iron Hands, under the command of Ferrus Manus, although his legion did not come in full strength, due to damage many of his ships had sustained. All in all, the Loyalist expedition consisted of over 250,000 Space Marines, bolstered by thousands of armored vehicles. The remaining 4 fleets of Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Wordbearers, and Alpha Legion were only hours away. However, impatiently, the Loyalist Primarchs already present decided not to wait any longer and started an attack. A barrage of macro cannons occupied anti-air defenses, while the army shuttled to the surface. The Raven Guard took the right flank, the Salamanders the left, and the Iron Hands the center. Immediately, the traitor Titans opened fire, killing hundreds of Space Marines, before retaliatory fire from tanks forced them to switch targets to Loyalist armored forces. In the center, the first line of the Death Guard sallied out to capitalize on the disorganization of the Loyalist Space Marines caused by dropping from orbit and Titan fire. This attack was met with the fury of Ferrus Manus and his personal guard. The decimation of the traitors rallied the Iron Hands, who assailed the trenches, crushing defense lines one by one. Meanwhile, the assault on the left flank was spearheaded by Vulcan, who made use of his inherited from the Emperor trait, the Perpetuality. This power made him regenerate all wounds in a matter of seconds, making him essentially immortal. With the majority of traitor firepower focused on the Primarch, the Salamanders slowly advanced with minimal casualties. This steady advance was not keeping up with the center due to the appearance of the Mortarion and the 2 remaining members of the Mournival, whose presence improved the traitors' wavering morale, and whose tactics stalled the Salamanders. On the right flank, the Raven Guard decided to bypass trenches with a jump pack assault. Upon landing, instead of a vulnerable back line, they were met with a World Eater ambush led by their Primarch Angra. In this melee combat, the traitors had an advantage. To make matters worse, in order to retreat, the Raven Guard had to split their forces into 2 parts. The first one was engaged in combat with the World Eaters, and the second was clearing the bypassed trenches. Of all the Loyalist forces, the center alone continued its advance deep into traitor lines. All attempts to stop the Iron Hands failed, even the use of newly created Noise Marines, who were designed to combat Space Marines.
You're
They
weird.
used as weapons chaos-augmented instruments that created sonic
Well, they
attacks capable of bypassing even the Terminator armor. Yet the Iron Hands had to leave more and more soldiers to guard their flanks, as both the Salamanders and Raven Guard were too far behind. With the Iron Hands spread so thin, the fight degenerated to squad combats and even duels in some parts of the front line, even though there were hundreds of thousands of combatants. In one such duel, the first captain of the Iron Hands was killed by his counterpart from the Emperor's Children Legion. Around 3 hours into the battle, the second wave arrived. 4 legions dropped onto the surface behind the Loyalists and immediately started fortifying the landing zone. The traitors, upon seeing over 300,000 fresh and ready Loyalists, decided to retreat to the fortress. Even the most bloodthirsty or demon-possessed traitors started fleeing. With victory at hand, the 3 exhausted Loyalist Primarchs started arguing over the next move. Vulcan and Corvus Corax wanted to retreat and regroup, while Ferrus Manus wanted to catch the retreating Primarchs, especially Fulgrim, who was now within his range.
I swear,
With no
Fulgrim
Primarch
is
holding
like
a
an
higher
ongoing
position than the
antagonist
other,
in
each
almost
legion
every
follows the orders of
single
its own commander.
instance of
Ferrus Manus
Warhammer.
advanced to duel Fulgrim, while the Salamanders and the Raven Guard retreated. As Ferrus Manus reached Fulgrim and the 2 retreating legions were 100 meters from the reinforcing legions, a single flare was shot from the traitor command post. The reinforcements opened fire, killing hundreds of betrayed loyalists in seconds. The second wave were all traitors. After the initial shock of this treachery passed, Corvus Corax and Vulcan couldn't agree on how to proceed. Vulcan wanted to break the line of the new forces to reach the shuttles and retreat to orbit, while Corax thought it was impossible. For him, the best strategy was to strike the weakest part of the line and break the encirclement. Escaping the battle was more important than escaping the planet. While this discussion continued, the duel between Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus came to an end, as Fulgrim beheaded his dear brother.
Jeez.
Realizing what he had done and all the atrocities he had committed, Fulgrim let a demon possess him to free himself from the pain. To complete the encirclement of the Loyalists, Horus's forces sallied out of the fortress, spearheaded by the traitor Imperial Army, whose role was one of meat shields, stopping the Iron Hands from joining with the rest of the Loyalists.
I mean, seriously, where's
Only
the
those
orbital
who protected the
bombardment?
flanks managed to break away from combat, escaping the fate of being overrun and slaughtered. On the other side of the battlefield, the Salamanders, helped by remnants of the Iron Hands and a few of the Raven Guard, managed to reach the shuttles. Yet to their dismay, most of them were destroyed. A handful escaped, while Vulcan and the Salamanders dug in for their last stand. Wave after wave attacked, but the line held, despite being bombarded by artillery and Titan fire. Meanwhile, the Raven Guard were breaking through the ranks of Wordbearers.
Vulcan has a hammer that is literally a city-destroying weapon. Why was he not using it here? Or was he? I'm confused. That weapon was given to him to be protected by the Emperor, because he would protect it, but due to his perpetual ability, he could blow it up numerous times, just auto-recover. The heck? Yeah, no. These weird people keep posting in my comments.
Until Lorgar Aurelian crossed their line. Corax, skilled in fast and underhanded melee combat, had the upper hand against the Priest Primarch of the Wordbearers and defeated him. But before he could deliver a killing blow, Conrad Kurz, Primarch of the Night Lords, arrived. The two had similar roguish fighting styles, but Corax was exhausted and wounded. Conrad drove off the Raven Guard Primarch, and as a consequence, his legion, sending them back on the advancing forces of the Sons of Horus and World Eaters, led by their Primarchs. Eventually, the Raven Guard managed to escape the encirclement, but only with 4,000 Astartes from the 80,000 that had originally landed on Istvan V's surface. The Salamanders had no such luck. Their position held firm against so many attacks that Perturabo, the Iron Warrior's Primarch, decided to end it once and for all. He launched a tactical nuke, annihilating every single surviving loyalist. With the battle ended, unbeknownst to all other traitors, Konrad Kurz ventured into the nuclear crater to recover the regenerating body of Vulcan, taking him to his own ship as prisoner. The shuttles that managed to escape to orbit saw that the situation was the same here. The traitor fleet was annihilating unsuspecting loyalist vessels, with only a few escaping, but not before rescuing those who managed to reach orbit. This grievous defeat resulted in the Empire essentially losing 3 entire legions, with 4 more joining the ranks of Chaos. With 1 Primarch dead and 1 captured, reclaiming Corvus Corax was a task of utmost importance, especially to the few Raven Guard not present in the battle. A lone frigate was sent to covertly recover him and all survivors, but it would take weeks or even months to reach them. The 4,000 survivors had it rough, as most of the traitor legions stayed on Istvan V to look for them. First, the survivors had hidden in the Highland Hills, but it was too close to the Urgal Plateau. The Iron Warriors' armoured column was heading in their direction. The Raven Guard prepared an ambush, hiding on both sides of the incoming tanks. The trap was sprung. The Raven Guard made a jump pack assault, rapidly closing the gap between the forces. Swiftly, the traitors were wiped out, but their position was now compromised. For the next month, the Raven Guard was constantly on the move, looking for any more survivors, yet they found none. Moving a force this large was attracting too much attention. Corvus ordered his forces to hide in Lurgan Ridge, while he alone was doing reconnaissance. This brought them an additional 2 months of hiding. But no one can hide forever, and eventually they were discovered. The World Eaters had found them. The traitors decided to bombard the survivors with artillery fire. The bombarded position was seen by the rescue frigate, managing to rescue 3,000 survivors and the Primarch moments before destruction. With the Battle of Istvan V, now known as the Drop Site Massacre, concluded in a decisive traitor victory, the future looked grim for the Empire. 3 of their legions were destroyed, and 3 legions were sent to the edges of the galaxy. The only legions capable of interference were the Imperial Fists, whose forces...
This is why they really needed Gilliman to be the Lord Commander. I believe he probably would have had this sorted out pretty quick.
Were split in 2, the Space Wolves, exhausted from the burning of Prospero, and the White Scars, who still did not respond to any call to arms. Yet the road to Terra was a long one, and Horus wanted to be sure that nothing unforeseen would happen, especially since originally, in his plans, the Iron Hands and Ferrus Manus were on his side. The traitors were sent across the galaxy to fulfill many goals Horus gave them, while Horus himself prepared for the inevitable attack on Terra, the almost impregnable fortress. How will the galaxy react to civil war in the Imperium? Whose side will the trillions of citizens across the galaxy choose? How will the situation escalate? Find out in our next episode.
Find out in the next exciting episode of 40K Warhammer Universe DBZ.
Our series on the Warhammer 40k Horus Heresy will continue, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.
Alright, I'm going to go and stop it there. It'll be on video 5. Next live stream will pick up with more 40k lore. I had to cut it a little bit short because it's raining, and I'm getting a little bit of frame droppage and in and out with my live stream because of all the rain and the thunderstorms. So I'm going to have to cut it short. I wish I wasn't, but sadly I have to. Alright, that'll be it for today. I will see you guys next time.